Yo, what's up, y'all? This is Razcast, and you're tuned into If I Ruled the World podcast.
If I ruled the world, I love them, baby.
All right, If I Ruled the World podcast welcomes Josh, Whutsiznaim, Lefkowitz.
Yes, sir.
What's up, brother?
How you doing, guys? Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming out here from Belmore. That's where
right.
you're from. We were just trying to do the math as to where you've been on Long Island, and I know you went apple picking, so you've been east of here.
Thug life.
So let's tell the folks why you're here. You know,
okay.
The thing is, I've known you. Full disclosure, I've known you for a while. We've only met a couple times.
Yeah.
And one time was at your wedding.
Correct.
It's a long story how I got to your wedding, Correct. But so you put out something that we came across that I fell in love with. And I'm going to describe what I found. It's actually a podcast series,
right?
And that doesn't feel like the right way to explain it. You can call it an audiobook. Maybe that's not the right way to explain it. But the way you explained it was calling it a mixtape memoir. And that feels like more of a perfect explanation. So maybe we could start this talking about what is a mixtape memoir.
All right. So basically what happened was the short version is that I wrote a book. It took me about 10 years off and on to really get it to where I was comfortable with it. And then when I, said, okay, I'm going to try to get it published, started shopping it to literary agents. And notoriously that process is very annoying and hard and heartbreaking. A lot of times they won't even write back. I mean, this is what it is. For me, I had some conversations, which was encouraging, but basically what I learned from that process is the book industry is dying in the same way that the music industry died. So unless you're coming to the table as like a social media influencer with 100,000 followers, they're not going to try to pick you up as a client and therefore not try to shop your book. So it started to feel a lot like, please listen to my demo. And I didn't like it. It was, one of the reasons why I left the music industry. So I just didn't want to let somebody else define my art. And I said, well, what else can I do? And finally I came up with an idea to record it as an audiobook, but also score it with music. So as the story moves along, all the music that's playing is either represents the year that I'm describing. So if it's 1988, there's music from 88 playing. If I'm talking to someone, I might be playing their music. If I'm talking about one of my songs, that instrumental is playing. So it feels like a mixtape. I scored it and sort of like had the music drop in and out as it would in a continual mixtape. It never fades out and stops and starts. It's just like a continuous thing. So it is an audiobook, but I broke it up and released it as a weekly podcast in 27 parts. So you can call it a scripted podcast. You could call it an audiobook. I call it a memoir mixtape.
It's a perfect description.
Thank you.
It's called Why You'll Never Be a Rapper. Incredible title. I really like it. It brings like imagery for people who've been in music industry of like that struggle as to like trying to get there, not quite getting there. And your entire story has so much to it, like your hits and misses and being like this close. And that's my finger doing a little small little thing. And so much, you're so self-aware in this book as far as like saying what you were thinking.
Sure.
And Sam and I were talking because we come from like a punk and hardcore background, which is a little bit more like you never admit you want to be a rock star.
Right.
Whether you do or you don't,
you
just don't admit it. Or maybe you don't.
You don't even look to get paid for shows.
Yeah. Nah, it's on me.
Right.
This one's on me.
Interesting.
Could I do your dishes?
Right.
And you have such a an honest approach to how you were saying where you started, what you decided to do, what you're willing to compromise on, and everything in between. So that it really brings us to the content of this mixtape memoir. So let's break it down a little bit. As far as you came from North Carolina?
Correct. So came from Durham, North Carolina, started rapping really, really young. Technically 12, but wrote my first rap at 8. I'm 42, so you can do the math. Rap was definitely not a thing back then. That was like, I used to hide in the corner and listen to rap, being a Jewish guy from Durham, North Carolina. Anyhow, so did everything I could there, high school talent shows and all that good stuff, and consistently would hear good feedback. So it wasn't just like, oh, I think that what I'm doing sounds pretty good. Other people thought it sounded pretty good. That gave me the confidence. I would do things, shows. I would put out songs.
What was your influence like back then as a kid?
As a kid, it was definitely like Big Daddy Kane, Rakim, Third Bass for sure. We were just talking about that, off air. Fat Boys. I mean, you name it. Dougie Fresh, Slick Rick.
So you're North Carolina.
Right.
So like, what's the hip hop scene when you first discover it? Because I would imagine at this point, like these like regional sections are still all kind of being influenced by New York.
Correct. So that is the most surprising thing probably to people not from North Carolina is if you think about where it is, it's really in the middle of the East Coast. So you do get influences from everywhere. But back then, I mean, it was all New York. Sure, there was some West Coast stuff, but that wasn't, the main sound of hip hop that we thought of. You know what I'm saying? But even like NWA and Eazy-E, they were still, you could tell they were influenced by the New York sound. I mean, it was still like rapping, like it wasn't trap music or any of the Southern stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Went to New York to work with the Bomb Squad.
Exactly. So that's, it was heavy New York, really my entire career. Until, I moved to New York and decided I was going for it. I moved here. I had, my clothes in contractor bags. I had no job. We got a one-way rental van and myself and my best friend from college who wanted to be on the, other end of the music industry. He wanted to be a manager and a label owner, kind of like a Puff Daddy kind of guy. And he's got a great ear for music as well. And we moved here and we just both had a free place to stay and we said, we're going to figure it out. So we did and started an indie label. And that's when sort of, as I got closer and as it became more accessible and I was just meeting people who knew people for real, that's when I started to get influenced by what's on the radio, what's kind of becoming the pop music, it was like the ringtone rap era.
Was that you? What year was that?
I'll say like 03, 04, 05 is really when it, and also that's when the music industry started to decline. Mm-hmm. So there was a hand-in-hand thing of like, well, you better do this because all these labels are dying. So I'm like, well, I've dedicated my whole life. Like, I don't have a plan B. I mean, I went to college. I have a degree. I never did anything with it.
What'd you go for?
I went for college. No, but literally that was
college?
I did. I majored in degree,
liberal arts.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so it was like radio, TV, and film. Okay. Because I was basically like, all right, I'm going to get a degree. I'm the youngest of 5. Everybody in my family has a degree. It's like, I got to get a degree. So I use that time to be like, pretend like I'm an adult, learn how to be an adult and have a checkbook and credit cards and stuff on my parents' dime. But, I just reestablished myself in the other local scene. And that was awesome, too, because that was Greensboro, North Carolina. And there's a really rich history of hip hop from there as well. But yeah, so anyway, getting back to the original point, that's when I started to get influenced and sort of felt like it's do or die. I'm getting older. I have no plan B. I've never thought about doing anything else. Maybe I'll, play up a Southern accent a little bit. And as you can hear, maybe to you guys, maybe I sound like I'm not from New York, but I definitely don't have a Southern accent. And I never really have.
Only because I listened to your Mixtape Memoir.
Right.
I heard it a little bit when you came in here because I was like listening for
sure.
It. I heard a tiny bit.
It exists.
I could be making it up.
Listen, I'm born and raised in North Carolina. I lived there until I was 22, but I'm the spawn of Bronx Jews, and my 4 older siblings are also all from the North. 3 technically from New York and 1 from like Massachusetts. So it's like, it's not even so much that, but it's just that like my friends were Southern. But at home, the culture, I mean, they're New York Jews. It's like,
there you go.
Hey, say that again. That sounds funny. It was like, it's not like to disrespect Southern slang or the accent. But in my house, that wasn't the accent. You know what I mean? So I always was aware that like in the grand scheme of the world, maybe I may not want to like have that accent.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
It's super particular for sure. Like I was listening to like the TI podcast today.
Yeah.
Like he has a draw.
Well, Atlanta's like deep.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's at the bottom.
At the bottom, yeah.
But for sure, I mean, like I always said that I had a northern accent. It's like a northern southern. You know what I mean? Like you can hear it. If I drink a lot, you'll hear it more.
It'll come out.
Yeah.
Keep drinking that wine then.
Right.
So,
right.
So what's funny is like you mentioned your best friend, which I guess you were talking about Rue.
Rue, yes.
Okay. So he was going to be like the manager type.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have a brother, David, who was a manager.
Correct.
He was a manager for Primus.
Correct.
And like some really successful things going on.
Primus being the most successful.
Yeah, that's pretty big.
Yeah.
So how did you two like just never try working together?
Well, we did.
You did, but like,
and he actually shopped my demo on 2 separate occasions. There is a story in the book about 1996. I had a song that got into someone's hands, and they submitted it to Hot 97 Home Jams, unbeknownst to me. And then, coincidentally, I was coming to intern at Jive Records, which I got through my brother David, because he knew people there. And that was sort of like, okay, well, I'll just be in a record label, and then I'll just like pass people my demo. I mean, listen, I was 19.
That's what it was. That's what it was. Yeah, for sure. Before you give somebody your Spotify link.
Right. That's what it was. So I would come to work every day with a backpack, and it had like press kits and like an 8x10. Like it was just like in my bag. But anyway, so I got to hear like my song win Hot 97 Home Jams for like 5 or 6 weeks when I was 19. And like, I didn't live in New York. My mind was like blown. I'm like sitting in an NYU dorm where I was living for the summer, and I get to hear my song.
What does that do to a 19-year-old ego?
I'm a pretty level-headed guy,
yeah,
but it definitely fueled the fire. Like, if I thought that I had a shot at being a rapper and there were any doubts, something like that goes, well, no, of course not. Of course you're going to be a rapper. Because, I mean, you know, people in New York like it, and that's the Mecca. So if they like it, and they're not saying that it's good because they're your friends and you guys like went to 2nd grade together.
That's big, yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're not paying them to call.
Right, right. Which I never did. But,
yeah.
No, I never did it. But yes, for sure. I mean, that fueled the fire. And I mean, my whole career was like that. You know, there was just these things where it's like, maybe I'm just like delusional. And then something would happen and, you know, somebody famous would like it, or some rando rapper like, you remember Boss, the girl Boss?
Yeah.
She had that song that had the what's the sample? I'm blanking on his name. Barry White. I don't ever want to feel. She actually started with that.
Really?
Yeah, it's called Deeper. But anyway, it's a good song. But anyway, I ran into her in a club when I was like 17, and somebody introduced me. It was like, oh, this is my friend Josh. He goes by Whutsiznaim. He's a rapper. And she was like, huh, you look like a rapper. And I was like, I fucking look like a rapper.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that was like my whole life. Just shit like that.
Boss
meeting
co-signed
Dougie Fresh, or meeting, you know, Big Daddy Kane, or just whoever it was. And every single person treated me as if it was real. And I was like, this has got to be real then. So how could this not work out?
Well, also, most importantly, to jump to a particular point of the memoir, you got the biggest cosign by Big Daddy Kane. For sure. Like he basically described your style to you, but it was only after you had like some type of competition on the phone that can you just talk about that? Yeah.
So there was definitely ups and downs, as there are for all humans, but particularly for struggling recording artists. So I was in a down. I was it was before I moved to New York, and I was in a valley, so to speak. And he called me over. I became friends with him. You know, that's in the book. And to sort of like, I guess, jazz me up a little bit and to raise my spirits, he said, you know what, I'm going to call another guy, like a young guy unsigned from Brooklyn that I like a lot. I want you guys to, like, you know, exchange some bars over the phone, whatever.
Was it landlines?
It absolutely was.
Yeah.
It was, but you know what? He did have a flip phone at the time. I think we all had flip phones. His was tiny, sure. So he had the tiny one, like the little, you know.
Zoolander.
Yeah, like the. But anyway, so you know, the other guy rapped first, and he was real. You know, he was focused, and that is always for me. That was always the time for me to shine because it's like, all right, maybe you heard my songs and you were like, well, whatever. This doesn't really register with me, but in person, I always tended to grab people with the live performance. But that day, I mean, I was like in a, you know, I don't want to call it a depression, but it was, you know, I was down. I was like, I don't know if this is going to happen. I don't know what to do. And I rapped for him and it just wasn't the same thing. And I was like choking and, you know, I was like running out of, I had to like swallow halfway through. And I left and came back and there's a very like seminal conversation that took place. I don't want to ruin it because that's like one of my favorite parts of the whole book.
Yeah.
But he had a conversation with me that always blew my mind. And that's why when I sat down to really write this, I had to recount that because it was like, I can't believe this guy said this to me. Like he gave me a really large compliment, you know? So we'll just say that. So
yeah, hearing that part about Big Daddy Kane, as Sam said, as a cosign,
right?
It did. I did perked up. I was like, "Whoa!" You know, I didn't know all this.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
You started unwrapping the story, like you know, I put it on, and I'm like, okay, I didn't really know what to make of it, so I just hit play, and I was like, holy shit, the dude from Little Brother's doing it forward.
Yeah, right.
I was like,
Shouts to Fonte.
I was like, that's all right.
Yeah.
So I keep listening, and then I was just so into the story. And then the music in the background really just helped out because it's like a song. So you're listening to the story, and even if sometime, you know, like if I'm working while I was, you know, listening, if you do kind of like zone out for a second, you're still like with the vibe of the music. Just very well put together.
Thank you.
And it just, man, I don't know. You start peeling back the story, and in a way, like I know how it ends, but I was still rooting for you.
I've heard that,
you know,
which is really good. That's a consistent message that I hear. I mean, even from like my siblings, they would say like, you know, you'd get to this part where like you were meeting with Jive Records and like, I've known you since you were born. Like I like remember mom being pregnant with you, but like I was sitting there going like, oh my God, like, is this going to be the thing? Like I still, so you know, fortunately, but yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
And the way you put it together, like Sam and I talk about this a lot as far as like good songwriting. You know, what keeps you involved in the song. You know, when it was over, I wanted more. There was that. And there's also like a natural thing that happens when you're listening to, like, let's say a drier audiobook, even if it's like it's your favorite artist or whatever, the mind wanders.
Sure.
With the way you put it together, it's not just your voice. You act out certain things, which isn't easy. You have a certain way that you speak, which has energy, which is definitely the MC part.
Thank you.
You know, and then it's just you know, the stories are great, but then the music changes. You know, and some of it you know, some of it you don't.
Right.
But this change and like these little things that happen, I was like, and I listened to a lot of audiobooks. I was like,
I don't.
I know. Well, I'm an adult.
Yeah.
I told you he was.
That was the first thing you ever told me.
I was like, George is way more grown up than me. That's why I'm answering first.
Right.
Part of me was like, more audiobooks should be like this. Yeah,
no, but just listening to it, it just, I don't know, like you don't know the story. I didn't know anything.
Right.
And you start listening to it, and for what you want is to captivate someone. And it's such a great story, even if you don't know. I didn't know Josh, Whutsiznaim, but like you see the players and everything involved.
Sure.
And that's really like enticing. You're like, oh shit, you're basically there. Like you were rubbing elbows
for sure with
a lot of people. And it was such a, you know, like I said, coming like from that hardcore and punk rock thing, like you definitely tried, like I don't know. Maybe like sometimes I look back in music and I'm like, oh, maybe I should have tried harder. I didn't really
done with Josh.
Like school.
I didn't really take it too serious. And like coming from that punk and hardcore background where you're like not supposed to embrace certain things.
Right.
But I think you went full force for it.
For
so
sure.
You said from like the age of 12 to like 30, that was your goal.
Yeah, yeah. You know, one thing that's interesting, and I was thinking about this recently, when you do something like this, or rather when I've done something like this, obviously you're starting from like below zero, because our generation, I don't know how old you are, but
22.
Right. So, but our generation, you know, it was not a time when everything you did was on the internet. So if my story happened starting in 2015, well, of course you'd know me, because you'd Google me and 3,000 things would come up. Because if I did the same stuff 20 years later, well, you'd know everything. Yeah. Well, I'm starting from all the early stuff. You know, I had a #1 song locally on commercial radio that I just put out myself, and like the DJs liked it. And like that never happens, because North Carolina is not a place where they try to like, oh, let's support some locals. I mean, it's not, and you know, I don't mean to disrespect my home state, but it's just not a progressive place like that. They're just like, all right, what are you guys doing up there? Oh, Atlanta's the thing. What are you guys doing in Atlanta? Okay, so we'll play that. So my song was #1 on the radio station. Would you ever know that? No, of course not, because it wasn't the internet back then. You don't know anything. So basically the only way that you'll ever know anything that I ever did is to listen to this, which is a disadvantage in the sense of how do you get people to it? But once you listen to it, you'll see that like, no, I was really doing it. Like I moved to New York to be a rapper. Like I didn't move here for like school. Yeah. I didn't move here for like a job. Like I full on like had bullshit jobs, and was just one day like a couple of things happened, which you'll hear. I'm moving to New York. Like, this is what I have to do, because nobody in North Carolina knows anybody. It was always, you know, my friends, cousins, brothers, whatever, but it was never, you never got there.
Close enough.
So I was like, I got to go to where when you meet somebody, or they're like, you know, the person who works at the desk, that's actually such and such's cousin. I had to go there. Like, there's no other way. I had nothing left.
And that was the time, like, that's what it was back then. I remember you had demos, like, even back then, like, it's like, oh, I'm going to give it to this label. I'm going to give it to this label. Yeah. You always had it on you. Now, do you what do you think about now? Do you like what if Whutsiznaim started like 5 years ago?
Yeah,
like because it's a very DIY market, and you had a lot of hustle.
Well, it's a loaded question in the sense of if I was respected within the genre in the way I was respected in the genre then, I think I'd be good to go. However, I don't think I'd be making this kind of music ever. I mean, it's hard for me to like even think about that. But in terms of the common day, I think the barrier to entry is like way too low. Like it's just too easy, man. Like
it's like podcasting.
It's really unbelievable. But I do definitely feel like the cream rises to the top. Like there are people, I mean, I'm old and like washed up, but like I definitely still pay attention. So like when I see a new name, I immediately go, I want to hear what this sounds like. Mm-hmm. Now, to be fully transparent, when I hear the name, I know if I'm going to like it.
If it starts with Lil.
This generation, and this is some old man stuff, this generation is terrible at picking rap names. They're horrible. Yeah. They're just not good. I heard of a rapper called No Cap. That is the most used slang term right now. That would be like me being a rapper in the 90s called No Diggity. It's like the worst name I've ever heard. But that's what they do. But again, I try to keep up with...
Did you ever hear my rap name?
No. Georgie.
The.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. MC The.
Everybody uses it. Come on.
That's amazing. It's like Her. There's an artist called Her. But yeah, I just... there's just too much crap that gets through. That's my biggest complaint, you know? So modern day, it's too easy to like get stuff big, you know? But,
yeah. So you figure, cause like if you had, you know, like a demo or something to do, you actually had to get up and make it happen.
Sure.
Get money, go to a studio, buy a 2-inch tape, get an engineer, get somebody that knows how to cut tape.
Yeah.
Now you just look over at your phone, you're like, I'm going to just hum something to this beat on GarageBand and post it to SoundCloud. And I guess
it's so easy. It's really, it's unbelievable. I mean, in some ways, I don't want to be like bitter old guy. So I do really feel like good for them. That's great.
Yeah.
Like that. Good for them. That's awesome. Like that the rest of us made way for this new era where you could literally just like have a thought in class and go home and record it, put it on the internet and blow up. Like that's amazing.
Yeah.
The flip side of that is that there's just too much crap. It's like 90-something% crap. And I feel like the ones that are really making the good music, most of them have just been around. It's like 40-plus-year-old rappers. They're like the best ones.
And I think to myself, like, if it means something to someone, I can't knock that.
Sure.
You know, I might think it's complete trash, but like when I hear Post Malone, like I think we had this conversation, I'm like, I don't get it.
Right.
But I'm not supposed to get it.
Right.
Like I hit play
to get it.
Yeah. But like to someone, maybe, maybe they never did hear, I don't know, like a Kendrick.
Right.
As opposed to Post.
Right.
But if all these kids are vibing on it, like who am I going to be like, no, that's terrible? Because some old people do that.
Right.
Like, no, that's terrible. You should listen to, Houdini. And it's like,
right. Right.
In a way, you're supposed to reject. Like, if you're young, you should be like,
I hated Led Zeppelin.
I know.
I hated Led Zeppelin.
There's part of that. And the other thing, too, is like, as bad as we think mumble rap is, so was the Sex Pistols when they were screaming.
So was 9 Inch Nails.
So was Agnostic Front.
A
like,
lot of stuff.
Everything. So part of it is like what we all think and what we say.
Yeah.
You gotta step off a little. And be like, yeah, man. And then once in a while you'll hear something. You'll be like, all right, I get it. It's not that bad. But it isn't for me.
Yeah, it's
not
hard.
made for me.
I've really thought a lot about, like, I don't want to just take the old man stance. Like, I don't want to be, I am a parent and my kid found hip hop on his own because, it's hard because I want to play him like the music I came up on, but I don't want him hearing all that. He's 8 years old, but he discovered hip hop on his own through his friends, and like hip hop to him is
it's like 2 years away from Too Short.
Right. But hip hop to him, is what's on the radio. I mean, he loves a lot of that crap, and I've tried to explain to him like I remember when it first started, so it's not like I'm talking about like just a time period of the bigger picture. It's like hip hop's like my age. So I didn't obviously know when I was 3. I wasn't like listening to Rapper's Delight. But I mean, 85, I was there. 84, 83 even. I was still like, I was starting to get into some hip hop at 83,
I was listening to Rapper's Delight.
Yeah. It's only like 2 years and then you've got like the ground level stuff. But that's kind of my stance on it. It's like rap started as like, first it was the DJ, and then it became about the lyrics, and then the lyrics just kept elevating, and people took it in their ways, and then it just like hit a wall. And now we're in that, we're at that wall where it's literally every new song that I hear, I'm like, okay, people really like this guy. And then I listen to it and I go, it's the exact same lyrics.
Like it's the same cadence.
It's auto-tune, mumble rapping, singing, and they say the same 5 stuff: bitches, drugs, money, cars, clothes. It's like, come on,
it's
man.
Great
like,
checklist, to be honest with
right,
you.
Right.
Sounds like my last week.
But the whole thing with, I always knew that hip hop was relatively limited in terms of the main stuff. I mean, most of my songs were talking about why I thought I was the best rapper, which compared to every other form of music, that's crazy. Like that doesn't even make sense. Like, an older person, a person in their 60s and 70s takes a step back from that and goes, what the hell is that? Like, why could you imagine if like Mick Jagger was like, I'm the best singer, it's like, that's
exist.
It's the stupidest thing. Yeah. So it doesn't make sense to them, but at least people found creative ways and people are still there. I mean, Pusha T is my age, right? His album was unbelievable.
Yeah.
He's still talking cocaine, selling drug rap. But it's amazing because he still knows how to do it.
What was that quote in your book?
I don't know.
It was if I'm not able.
Oh, on days I wasn't able, there was always Kane.
Yeah,
that's the Kane chapter. That was from the clips.
I know.
For sure. I appreciate you catching that.
I should know that was Malice.
It was No Malice now. Who, by the way, I've heard is featured on the new Kanye album, which we were just discussing. He got the clips back together on a song. That's a side note. That's another thing, too. Every chapter in the book, I named it after a quote of a rap song.
Yes.
Or actually just the song, because there's definitely a chapter called Sledgehammer, which is not a rap song.
Right.
After the name.
Or Keeping the Faith, which is a Billy Joel
but
song.
Also because it was Jason Sledge or something?
Jeff Sledge,
who's
very much still in the music industry today. He's like a senior VP.
Well, because I'm listening to it, and I'm like, why is Sledgehammer playing? And somewhere along the episode, you say the last name.
Right.
Right. Yeah, there's a connection there.
I mean, it's definitely very detail oriented. Whether or not it comes across, that's up to the listener. I'm not going to say it's the greatest thing in the whole world. But
it sounds like something you have to listen to again and again, to be quite
That's
honest,
right.
because I pulled so much out of it in my first listen, ready to jot stuff down, knowing we were going to talk to you, but I was driving a lot of times. But then you're like, I'll remember that.
Right.
I remember that. And then you have to go back to it like a movie.
Yeah.
To get some more of the nuance.
Yeah.
Which, is a lot of the ways, I think, in the way you approached your lyrics,
Sure.
the stuff that you did.
For sure.
And a lot of stuff I picked up in the book, and I'm picking up even talking to you now, and even before we started the podcast, is you're an observer.
For sure.
And in the best lyricists, the best people involved in hip hop are observers, they're participants.
For sure.
They have some bravado.
Right.
It's all of this stuff, but the observer part of it works extremely well when you now have to do it in a form of this memoir that you did.
Thank you.
And in lyrics you can only do so much.
Right.
And
because it has to rhyme.
It has
to fit a cadence that works with the beat.
There's kind of like a box there.
Right. For sure.
This particular thing in which you did, I'm curious if you found a newfound love or something that you have to do. Just to kind of put a finer point on it, you grew up in the South, but you grew up with Jews from the Bronx.
Right.
You are in hip hop.
Right.
You're a white guy in a mostly black culture.
Which at the time, by the way, was not like it is now.
Yeah.
I mean, now it's I actually say it, I make a joke, in the book. It's you're welcome. You're all welcome.
Yeah.
Because honest to God, we were not, no one was doing that.
You were talking about the haircuts.
The haircuts. Yeah. It's
welcome.
we were getting the sides tapered and trying to do the Caesar. It was all just to as I put it, to wave our hip hop flags, because that was the expression. It was, it's the look and the whole thing. So yeah, I mean, I came up in a time, if you consider teenagers now liking hip hop, I mean, everyone likes hip hop. It's pop. I mean, I grew up, because of the age that I am, the station that I listened to would play Run DMC and then follow it with Poison, and then it's Guns N' Roses, and then it's Houdini after that. It's that was the station I listened to. So sure, when I first did Columbia House, 12 tapes for a penny, I got Poison, I got Guns N' Roses, I might have even gotten Whitesnake. It's just all this random stuff, because that's what it was. And that's what hip hop is now. And when I liked hip hop, people were like, you're like, what? That's insane.
Yeah. I mean, it was still very, it's kind of a racial divide.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Sure. I
would definitely, hear some of that, obviously not being white nor black.
Right.
But there was that line drawn in the sand. It's
For
you
sure.
can't like that. And I'm like, well, why?
Right.
Straight Outta Compton is so fucking punk rock. It's just so,
It is.
For sure.
And especially in the South. I mean, in the South, it's like I said, it's not a very progressive place. So when I went to school, everybody in my class was either black, white, Asian, which most people would just say Chinese, or Indian. And that's what it was.
Yeah.
So I literally grew up with a brother and sister who were Puerto Rican. And people were like, oh, you're black. And they ran with it.
Yeah.
And I literally did not know that they were Puerto Rican until after I graduated high school, when hip hop got big and Big Pun and Fat Joe, and they were like Puerto Ricans. And then the next thing I know, I see a Puerto Rican flag hanging from the thing. And I was like, oh, of course they're Puerto Rican. But that's how it was. Like, people don't understand. And then later it became Mexican. So if you're from anywhere in, South America, Central America, whatever, it's like, oh, he's Mexican. You know what I mean? So it was very like black and white, both figuratively and literally. So to be like a white guy who was into hip hop was like the weirdest thing ever. So that's where I started from. I started from it. It kind of was like a punk rock thing because it wasn't what everybody was doing. And of course I had like the white friends, and they listened to hip hop because I think that like certainly my age group was really everybody kind of started to get in hip hop, but it wasn't their main thing. They weren't like doing the whole thing. Like, they liked some rap songs.
What was the thing like? Because every group of friends has that one thing that they all agreed on. For us, it was like Tribe Called Quest.
Sure.
You could put that on. So like, what was like the gateway for your white friends?
I mean, I would say like there was just all these random songs, but for sure Tribe, Jazzy Jeff and Fresh Prince.
Yeah.
I mean, there was like, it was just more about like songs, like,
Public Enemy, maybe?
A little bit. Public Enemy was like more when the divide started more.
Did he just say fuck Elvis?
Yeah. But I mean, they didn't know, but it was like, I had friends that I'd always been friends with, and like one of them, we went the same direction, and it was like, hey, what's up with those Timberlands? And then the other ones were still like penny loafers, and they went to, the cotillion, and, like their parents were members of a country club, and, they were like full on like white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. Yeah. And then me and this other kid were just kind of like, nope, like we gravitate towards this. It's like, all right, let's get some starter jackets. And then, it would just like kind of go from there. It's like, let's get some Skids and some Major Damage and used jeans.
You guys were more Chris Gaines and they were more Garth Brooks.
I'm upset that I actually get that.
Yeah. I shouldn't have laughed as hard as I just did.
Because it's so bizarre.
Shout out to No Fences.
Right. But so it was certainly not like, again, a teenager hearing like a white guy that's into hip hop, that doesn't strike a chord. But I'm 42. It was a different thing in North Carolina, certainly.
Yeah.
Even when I moved here and I met all the guys that grew up in the city, for them, like, of course they liked hip hop. Of course they liked Showbiz and AG and Diamond D and like Big L, and like that was their thing. That was just regular to them. And they all, even if they weren't necessarily like super duper duper hip hop culturally, that's just what it was in New York. That was the vibe. That was not the vibe where I'm from.
Yeah.
You had to seek it out. You know what I mean? It was like I said, it was kind of punk rock. It was kind of like, what the fuck is this guy doing? Like, this guy. And then, if you want to hang out with people that listen to that, maybe you're not hanging out with other white people. And that was a whole thing, so that was part of it, because it wasn't a choice to say like, I'm going to hang out with black people. You know what I mean? Like that wasn't what I did. But eventually you look around and it's like, all right, well, most of these other rap guys are black, and, now I'm just the one white guy. And that was just sort of, my story in a time when that wasn't popular.
No. And that's always like an interesting like flip dynamic too, because like on occasion, there's that one black guy and he's around the white people, So I was watching Hip Hop Evolution on Netflix, which is super cool.
Yep.
And coincidentally, I was watching an episode and I see somebody that was featured in your book,
really,
which was Ski Beatz.
Oh, okay.
And they were talking about Jay-Z, and I forgot that I guess he had done some beats.
He did like 5, I think, on Reasonable Doubt.
So he's like a Durham, was he?
Not Durham, but he's from Greensboro. So I'm from Durham, went to school in Greensboro, which is about 45 minutes away. That's actually where Fonte from Little Brothers from originally. I didn't know him in Greensboro, but Greensboro, there was a big hip hop scene there that revolved around a group called the Busy Boys, who had a hit locally in the late 80s that sort of spread, because back then, if you had any connection to New York and you were making hip hop music and it was halfway professional, which would have just meant on a piece of vinyl and you could get it, great, Red Alert will play it, no problem. So they had a little bit of fame from Greensboro. One of the people in that group was Ski. now Ski Beatz. He originally was just Ski, Will Ski, technically. Ski went on to become, so he was in a group called Original Flavor, which featured Jay-Z before he was out. So they have a song called Can I Get Open, which is on YouTube. I actually play the beat.
So good.
Yeah, Can I Get Open is a great song.
That was featured on that episode as well.
Yeah, so there's a whole thing about me chasing him because he came back to North Carolina and was kind of like, all right, I'm going to like look out for you guys. And then I just sort of like chased him. And there's like a whole weird connection. I came to intern and, you know, like the person I was interning for happened to be managing him. And I was like, wait, but you manage him and you're in New York, but I go to school where he's from and we have friends in common. And so there's like this whole connection. But yeah, he's a legend, man. He's, you know, he's done a lot of stuff. He had a really good run, especially in the 90s. 5 songs on Jay-Z's first album, you know, Bahamadia and Camp Lo's whole album, which is like
so good.
Literally top 10 favorite albums of mine in the whole world.
That's interesting.
I cannot tell you what they're saying. I can say the words. It's like a parrot, you know, like a parrot can say words, but they don't actually know what a sentence means in English. They're just saying a bunch of words that to them mean sense.
Like Pootie Tang.
It was, it's kind of like, it is Pootie saying rap. But Camp Lo's first album, like that was his group and he did every song on there.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh shit, you're right.
Yeah. He did except one. One song was produced by someone from De La Soul. I don't know who it was.
That is so funny because that was the name. Wow. That's blowing my mind right now.
Yeah. So Ski, I finally got a chance to do a song with him. Is the short version, but so, it's all.
It's funny that you mentioned Camp Lo because we had the discussion, you know, when we were training music online, and you were like, I guess like more of like the underground stuff wasn't really your thing. You were a little bit, you know, Reasonable Doubt was your favorite record, all that other shit. Still lyrical. So it's funny that Camp Lo, and then a song that's also featured on the mixtape is Respiration by Black Star.
Yeah.
Which those are like 2 cousin albums, basically. Sure. So how did you stumble onto those?
You know, this is the way that I'll look at it. You know, I feel like these days, because I don't really gravitate towards, you know, the really underground, raucous-y kind of stuff, I feel like a better question to ask me would be like, not do you like this group? Do you think that they can rap? Well, yeah. I'm going to say yeah. Like, if they're good, I'm going to say they can rap. Do I gravitate towards their music? No. Because the foundation that I have musically, everybody wanted songs that were on the radio. Now, where it gets murky is where it was like, let's do this because it'll be on the radio.
Yeah.
You know, one of my favorite eras was like early 90s, like Black Moon, Smith & Wesson, like
classics.
But those are radio songs, Bucktown and Can I Get Open and How Many MCs. They didn't do it to get on the radio.
The radio came to them.
The radio came to them. But that's what Camp Lo was. I mean, Camp Lo was talking about stuff. They didn't make it to go like, all right, just put on a beat. So to me, where I don't really get into it is where I feel like it's just like, all right, just put on that beat and I'm going to do some raps. That's not a song.
Because you're a songwriter.
That's rapping over a beat. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That's the difference for me. I don't want to like name groups. You might have had them on the podcast, but like people
only had 2.
No, I'm just saying. But like honestly, I remember when the wave came, I was actually working at a record store and like, of course, heavy into making music. But like when that wave came in the mid to late 90s, you know, with like everybody that you probably love. When I would hear their music, I would go, these guys are great rappers. I'm not taking anything away from them. But unconsciously, I would say, they're not trying to do what I'm trying to do. And I still, though I haven't recorded a song in probably 13 or 14 years, I still look at music today as, could I do that? Right now, could I do that? If the answer is, I could do that right now without question, and it would be better, I probably don't like it because I shouldn't be better than you. I'm a 42-year-old father of 2 with a desk job who hasn't recorded music in 13 years. I should not be better than you, the rapper that gets paid to rap and do shows as a rapper. You know what I'm saying? And that's how I look at it. I cannot listen as a fan. I can't do it.
Do you still have that competitive feeling? Like
I do.
I sent you that Nem song, and
it was awesome.
Shit, that makes me want to rap.
Amazing. It did. It's very rare that I hear something and I go, I got to do this. So it never goes away. Every so often I'll think of something, like I'll hear a word and I'll think of like a rap line with it or like a metaphor, and I'll jot it in my phone. Just force of habit. Yeah. And I'll usually never do anything with it. But like, I think I stopped like probably 13 years ago. In the last 13 years I've written, I think 4 raps. And like, no one's ever really heard them, like maybe like one friend, but I still have it in me because like, it's just what I've always done. Like I still jot down stuff and I go, that would be like a funny metaphor to say.
Do you ever like let's say like you're at the gym or jogging or driving in the car, do you ever put on like an instrumental?
All the time. And I still love it. And instantly I start freestyling. And even through that, I still come up with stuff. You know what I mean? But the good news is that I've thought about the last, 12 or 13 years so much and what it means and where I am and who I am that I don't have that feeling of like, I got to record this. I got to put this out because maybe this will be the thing. And that's...
You're like George then. He's retired too.
I see where you're coming from.
Right, yeah. Right. But I mean, that's a lot of really what the story is about because as I really started to put it together and it's like, all right, well, what does this all mean other than just, this is my story, you don't know who I am, but like you should listen because I'm important. It really became all the stuff that I reflected on. Because as you said, I'm an observer, which is really code for like, I just think a lot. Like I just think a lot about everything. I've learned to use my powers for good, fortunately. But
not every observer can retell a story in the way that you do it with lyrics and the memoir you did.
Yeah, perhaps.
What I was getting at.
Yeah, perhaps. But
continue.
Again, so a lot of the story really is like, whether it's music or it's acting or it's, a stockbroker or a lawyer, there's definitely a point that you come to where you say, maybe the thing that I thought that I was going to do my entire life wholeheartedly is not going to be the thing. And then what? So I'm not, some sage or like some like soothsayer where like I'm the wisest guy in the world and like you should listen to what I think it is. I'm just telling you, I've thought about this. Here's what I came to. It makes sense to me. And maybe if you listen to it, it'll give you some comfort. Like maybe you'll see how you can survive chasing your dream for 30 years and then going, shit, man, I got to be an adult. Like, what do I do now? Do I live the rest of my life miserable? Do I still continue to do it? Do I not do it? Can I do it and not have the desire to be like the best dude? Like, what do I do? And that's what the book is. It's like, this is how I survived. This is how I felt along the way. This was the lead up to it. This is the point that I got to that drove me over the edge. And here's what I did since then. And here's the reflections that I have on it. And I think that that's a relatable story for anybody. Because like almost everyone I know chased a dream of some sort. Needless to say, I know a lot of like musicians and rappers and DJs and producers and whatever. I know a lot of them.
I was just listening to my mixes on the way here, to be honest.
That's what I'm saying. So listen, there's no right answer. There is no right answer. I don't think that like you get to a point where it's like, yeah, you got to stop. This is stupid. That's not the answer. The answer is, if you feel like this, here's how I rationalized it. Mm-hmm. Here's how I came to terms with it. Here's how I got rid of the baggage that came along with essentially being a failure, or so you think. Because I don't actually think I'm a failure, because it's not, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can't look at it as like, I want to be a famous rapper with a record deal and be like a billionaire. And then you didn't do that. Well, then you failed. That's not what it is. That's not life. You don't get to, you can't receive a message until you're ready. It takes like some maturity to get to that point. But if you're sort of veering towards that point, perhaps you could hear the story and say, I get it. Like that totally makes sense, because that's how I am. I hear people say stuff all the time and I'm like, that makes perfect sense. And it just like changes the way that I think about stuff. I remember being like 20 years old and hearing Jay-Z say, jealousy is a worthless emotion. I was like 20 years old. At 20, we're all jealous of stuff. It's like,
Yeah.
oh man, this dude is money.
You don't even know you're jealous. And
Yeah.
It just rules your life.
But he said that, and he was my favorite rapper, and he was like the coolest and the whatever. And he said, jealousy is a worthless emotion. And I was like, jealousy is a worthless. Why would I ever feel that? And I swear to God, I never felt jealous again. I would see people and I would go, that's awesome, man. That guy's like a cool car. I'd like to get a cool car. But I literally was never jealous again. And it's just not a thing that's in me. So that's what I hope that the book can do. You know what I mean? I hope that people can listen to the story and go, number one, this is cool and it's entertaining and it like fills my day because everyone just is like, I need more content, give me the content. So it's a lot of content. It's like 8.5 hours. But maybe somebody will come away from it and say like, that's cool, man. Like that's a good perspective on it. I like that. And then, hopefully like do some good shit for themselves.
There's a lot of gems in there.
Thank you.
One of the gems that I got, it's definitely somewhere near the beginning. It's definitely at the end, is journey is the reward.
Yep.
And you and I spoke off air about that, what we missed when we were chasing something as artists.
Right.
That we can kind of appreciate now.
Yep.
As far as like just doing it, like even like say doing a podcast
Sure.
about your art or whatever. And I took that as like an overall thread.
For sure.
Because you could be so honest about, you had said failure before.
Right.
But all the mishaps and the misfires and the kind of like spikes in success and stuff like that to kind of be so reflective. And now as journey is the reward,
sure.
Is there something that continues your journey with this, why you'll never be a rapper? Is there something next?
Hopefully. I mean, it's funny because when I made a conscious decision that I'm not going to make music anymore, I'd always been Josh the rapper. And I come from a small town and you have an identity and you live with that identity. So all through middle school, all through high school, all through college, even after college, oh, that's Josh the raps. That's how I was known. So then I said to myself, well, who am I if I'm not Josh the rapper? So at the time, I kind of started doing some writing and like writing for blogs. It was the blog era. And I was like writing for my friend's blog just because like I would say funny stuff to him and he would say like, you should write like a blog on that. I don't know anything about writing. Full disclosure, I was never a huge reader as a kid. I mean, as an adult, I read more. But I thought to myself like, okay, I'll be Josh the writer. Like I'll be a writer, and already it was like, not to get like weird, but like, I felt like the universe was kind of like, come on, like just, you're not gonna be Josh the writer. Like I needed to live a little bit more. It's like, I don't have to be Josh the writer because to me, the idea, forget about getting a record deal, being a rapper. I was almost kind of like past that because I was like, I met my wife and I was like, this like makes me feel a lot better than like chasing these stupid dreams and pretending like I'm the Uber everything. I just thought to myself, I have to do something that's creative. How can I exist in the world in a job that is not a creative job? Like, how can I go meet people and be like, oh, what do you do? Oh, I work in property management and I manage a leasing office of it didn't sound cool. So then I went on this like couple years where I was like, all right, I'm not taking my job seriously. I'm going to figure out the next creative thing. But again, it wasn't where I was supposed to end up. So I just, I had to learn. I had to learn about the writing the book. I had to learn about having a blog. I had to learn, what does that mean? What does it mean to make it in that field? And what I eventually learned was the creative thing is awesome, but if it doesn't make you happy, what the hell are you doing? That's the real key. So it's like, I want to be like, I want to be a stand-up comedian. Okay, cool. Yo, let's go grab a drink. I can't, I'm broke. And for some, that's fine. But not for me. Like I had to learn what makes me happy.
Yeah.
I like a certain level of stability. I do. I like a certain level of anonymity. I like a certain level of like people not knowing my business, people not judging me online. I remember when the MySpace thing started to happen, like the first time I ever got a negative comment, I freaked out. I couldn't believe it. I took a picture and it was, a picture of like some sneakers I had gotten and like they were like some cool like sneakers. I've always been into sneakers or whatever, but they were some cool sneakers and I wrote, you ain't got these. And it was just from like a rap song. I wasn't trying to be like, oh, I'm the god of, whatever. And some guy was like, come on, man. Like, you know, I like your music, but like, you know, don't do that. You sound like, you know, like a white guy trying to be black. And it like crushed me. I was so pissed off. It got to a point where the guy was like ready to fight. Like he wanted to fight me. He was like, yo, I'm in Queens every day. It got weird. And that's, again, that was a lesson. That was part of the journey that was like, you don't like this. Could you imagine if you got popular? And now I'm 42 and I look not a young person. And now people are online and they're like, oh, this dude is whack because it would have like, I would have walked around with like so much anxiety. If I would have gotten to the level that I wanted to get to, I wouldn't have liked that. I wouldn't have liked being famous. I know that I wouldn't have. But this is all the journey. So the journey is the reward to me because it just makes you a better human being. And at the end of the day, that's what we all are. It doesn't matter that like you can wake up in the morning and you can maybe go get a tattoo on your face because your job, you don't have a job. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter. Like you make music. That's what you do. Like I always looked at those people and I said, fuck, man, I want to be a creative. Yeah. Like I can't call myself a creative if I go to work every day, if I have to wear a tie. Like that's corny. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that was the journey for me and just like becoming a human being that's comfortable with the human being that I've become. And when I have the opportunity to make art, I can make it, but it's going to be something that I enjoy. I put a shitload of work into this. This fucking thing took me so long. You have no idea.
I could only imagine. It took me 8 hours.
That's what I'm saying. I, honest to God, I started writing this book in 2000 and I don't know if it was 6 or 7. And I wrote it and I didn't know anything about writing and it sucked. And then I wrote like 3 versions of it. And then I started having kids and like had to get used to that whole circus. And every couple years I would like, all right, I'm going to finish this book because I gotta be a creative. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a writer. And it wasn't until I was like really whole as a person, consciously whole, to where I finished it. To where I was like, I know what I need to change. You know, fortunately, there were also years, like 5 years of me going, oh, I should put this part about like AJ Scratch. That would be awesome. I should put this part about Dougie Fresh. That would be awesome.
What did your best friend think of the book?
Which, Rue?
Yeah.
Rue told me he loved it. He told me he was proud of it. He told me that there were some things that he remembers differently. Okay. And that's fair.
Sure. Yeah.
Because a memoir is as good as the author's memory. I might have got it wrong. But it's a chicken and an egg thing for me. It's like, did you mean to say it like that? Or did I hear it like that? You know what I mean? Yeah. So anything that I felt weird about, was it him saying it to make me feel weird at the time? Was he frustrated? Or was I just supposed to hear it like that? Yeah. Because I believe in whatever that is. Whatever that thing is, if it's the universe. I say in the book, whether it's the universe or God or whatever it is, I don't know what it is. But I believe it because it's there. And if you're making the right moves, you'll know it because it's layups. And if you're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole constantly, it's not it.
But and everything in there that, how do I explain it? Like anything that's a juicy story. Yeah. Doesn't feel like you trying to be the winner. Right. It doesn't feel like you're trying to hammer someone. Okay, good. That's not easy. That's not easy to do.
Yeah, thank
you. Because in a story where you're trying to get your point across, there could be a winner loser situation. Yeah.
Sure.
Right? I was right. He was wrong.
Yeah.
But the arc of it is there, and it does feel fair and rounded, but not boring.
I worked
you're just
hard
trying
on
to be
that.
everyone's friend.
Right. I worked hard on that for sure. I mean, there was definitely
a lot of balance there.
There was definitely things that I would like change 2 days prior to a chapter coming out because I released this December 28th of 2018, and then a new chapter would come out every Friday consistently for 6 full months. So there's 27 chapters, and there would be chapters that I would change 2 days prior to it coming out. And those were the things that I would change.
Yeah.
I would hear something and I would go, oh my God, it sounds like I'm saying this guy did this. Or maybe I said something, that was like, he said that, this person did this. you know, and then this person did this and this person did this, but I wasn't sure of it. So I had to go back and be like, he said that allegedly this person did this. He also talked about how his, you know, impression of the situation was this. Like, I didn't want it to ever come across as like, you know, that I was disgruntled or that, you know, fuck everybody that, you know, didn't look out for me or didn't sign me or, you know, whatever. And certainly, like, me and Rue are, like, we're great. Like, we don't ever have to talk again. Every time we talk, it's like we just hung out yesterday. And I didn't want to disrespect him. I didn't want to feel like any decision that he ever made was like the wrong decision and that was the reason. I wanted to make sure it was like, he made this decision. This was his mindset. Maybe I thought it was cool. Maybe at the time I was like, I don't know about this. And I rolled with it. And then later learned that like, I felt weird about it because I knew in my gut that this was not what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
But that only lends to the bigger story. It's like, if you want to be famous in entertainment, there's no way around it. Like, you really have to like do stuff that's like not cool. Like,
Yeah.
that's just what it is. I mean, the biggest rappers, like, you know, they dress weird and, you know.
And that comes across in the story for anyone that's going to listen to it.
Thank you.
It's like you and your best friend basically taking on the world and the years that follow. And I don't know, if you hit play, you're totally going to be into it like I was. I didn't know you from a hole in the wall. And I had time to kill, and I just listened to the whole thing pretty much in one shot.
Thank you, man.
I
really
like,
appreciate it.
Yeah, I was like, I'm done by Friday.
Like,
Yeah.
all right, so I wanted to ask you, there is a lot of gems. I brought it up in the podcast.
Thank you.
In your memoir. Name of your memoir is Why You'll Never Be a Rapper. And I'm curious, you have a couple kids.
Yes.
Maybe if the kids grow up.
Right.
And maybe if they have an artistic gene.
Right.
Or
they do.
They grew up with a lyrical dad.
Right.
Maybe one of them wants to be a rapper.
Right.
And I love the title because it's also like, I love things that are like a call to action or like really kind of like big. Mm-hmm. And that's, are you going to be like, here's why you'll never be a rapper?
Right.
Or listen to this first, or like, where do you go with something like
No. That? So it's funny that you brought that up. When I consciously stopped, I almost immediately started writing down the story. And immediately the title came to me. And this is like 2006 probably. And I don't know why, but it popped into my mind. Why You'll Never Be a Rapper. And I knew that was it. And as I got to, you know, kind of like, let's say a year ago, and or maybe 2 years ago when like the written version was done, and I was letting a couple people read it. I have a sister who has a book that's published. It's like a young adult's book. It's like, you know, I think it's like Penguin put it out. It's like a full on like major publisher. So I let her read it. And she said, you know, let me ask you about the title. Are kids going to see this in a bookstore and be like dismayed? Like, is that what you're trying to do? And though I knew that like, that's not what it is, I was like, does she have a point? You know? And then I immediately consulted my wife, who her taste level is phenomenal. And I said, you know, Cheryl said this and whatever. And she was like, no. That's the title.
She's right.
That title's fucking awesome. And I rolled with it. So you have to listen to the story.
Full disclosure, I know Monica from years. That's 100% taste level.
Thank you. I consult her about everything. If I have a question, a pair of sneakers, like, you like these? But you have to listen to the story to see sort of how I brought it around.
Absolutely.
But I honestly was writing the book. When I first started it, it was just a disgruntled rapper's book.
Okay.
So it was more of that. It was more like every chapter would be like, oh, you like, you like rapping with an accent that's not your own accent? Well, that's why you'll never be a rapper. It was like, it was more just like disgruntled.
That was the hook.
It was like, it was like every chapter. It was like, this is why the music industry sucks kind of thing, And even once it evolved, I was like, okay, this is what I had to figure out, why is this title so, like, why am I so sure that this is the title when that's not the hook anymore?
Mm-hmm.
And then I figured it out, and I was like, it's not why you'll never be a rapper. It's just like why maybe you won't do the thing. You know what I'm saying? And again, I as you know, like the book ends with, this is why I kind of chose that title.
It's a perfect title, and I can't explain why.
Thank you.
That's at the end of it.
Thank you.
I was like, because I was looking for that hook the whole time. And I was like, maybe that's why it's a perfect title.
Yeah, I mean, that's art,
it's
man.
Another reason to stay engaged.
Yeah.
Besides all the...
I appreciate, you know, it's good to have conversations like this, because you make something and you think it's good, but when other people say things that like you knew in your mind consciously, then you go, holy shit, that worked. And that's amazing. Like, that's amazing for me, because again, I did this all myself. Like, this is not like, you know, no one funded this. Like, I recorded this in my basement on GarageBand. Like, my buddy who recorded me for years taught me how to use GarageBand over FaceTime. Like, hey man, how do I record? He's like, get this mic. It's the blue mic. It's Yeti Blue. It's a good one. It's like, all right, I went on Amazon, bought the like Yeti mic. Like, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. They told me about the levels. So again, I mean, this is really like from my basement. I came home. There was no money in it. Like, it was just every day. Like, do I want to make this, or do I want to go to sleep after a whole day of working and putting kids to bed and bathing kids and whatever. And it's amazing to hear that kind of stuff, because while you're making it, you go, I wonder if people are even gonna like get that, or is like that cool, or is that stupid? And you go like, no, that sounds cool. And then someone else will go, I like the way you did that thing, and you're like, holy shit, I wanted them to like the way I did that thing. So I appreciate these conversations, man. It's really like,
it was a lot of things
flattering.
Like, you know, to go back to the titles, we were talking about the Roots, you know, was on there, Souls of Mischief. Even like the references, like to drop like a KMD reference, the Peach Fuzz thing. So little things that make you, it's almost like an Easter egg or a treat at the end of these episodes, where it just keeps you going. Because I'm like, the KMD reference was pretty early on. So I'm thinking like, okay, this guy, like maybe he knows what he's talking about.
Right.
You know,
so that's the other thing too, is that there's also almost a friend of mine said, you know, Asim, who's in the book, from the Noses.
The Noses. That's right.
That was a good name. But he said, you know, it's almost like an unofficial. You get almost like a history of hip hop. You get like a history of like recording. Like, I talk about how, you know, we started recording with like the pause tapes and you know, like the whole thing. Like it's just it's really like there's a lot of different angles to it. It's like not only my particular story, but it's like there may be things that the listener could relate to, be it chasing the dream, stop chasing the dream, getting older and kind of going like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. But there's also like this is the music that got me through my life. And to any music lover, you know, you identify with music on an emotional level. So the music that plays in the background, it's like, sure, you know, I'm talking about 1985, but this was my 1985. And then you go, oh yeah, that song was awesome. It's like maybe something you just heard on the radio and maybe you didn't think about it, but then you hear it and you go like, that's a great beat. Like, that's a great song, you know, excuse me. So, you know, again, there's a lot of stuff, whether it's cool, Easter eggs or what.
There's little explanations in there, like when you're talking about the pause tape. And I was like,
for sure,
I know what a pause tape is. The way you quickly explained everything for someone who wouldn't know.
I almost took that part out. I'll be honest with you. I thought that it was boring because that part was in there from the beginning. There's not a lot that was like in there from 2006 that made it to like 2019. That made it the whole way. And like the kind of the last person to touch the book, who kind of like edited it, so to speak, I was like, hey, you think this is, she was like, no, you got to keep this in. Like, this is awesome.
But there's a lot of things that works on the level which, you know, you want in every movie or documentary or music, where someone who is interested in the culture gets a lot of the things that Sam gets.
Right.
And then someone who has no idea what's going on can stick with it and
that's
like
awesome.
Stay with the whole story. You know, so
that's what I wanted to do too, because that
easy.
is a good representation of myself too, because there was always like, there's always a balance. It's like, if you think about a rapper, my life growing up could not have been different. But for whatever reason, I was drawn to this music. I mean, it chose me. I didn't choose it. It's not 2019 where you wake up and you go like, oh yeah, I'm going to do that. And the next thing you know, you're in your bedroom and you're like, Versace, you know, like that wasn't my experience. It was
still
like,
got it. You still got it.
Yeah. It was like you just wake, you know, like it grabbed me and it was like, no, come here. Like this is what you do. And furthermore, you're going to make this. But again, I don't come, like my story is not like, I didn't grow up in the projects. Like I'm not, you know, it wasn't like that. Now, did I have something to say? Absolutely. Did I have the same emotions that drive someone whose anger or confidence or whatever it is? Do I have those same emotions? Absolutely. They came from a different place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I definitely made a conscious decision to like, how can someone like this that's maybe not into rap? Like, I don't want to say like, I wrote a book for rap fans. If you like rap, you'll appreciate this book even more. If you don't though, you'll still like the story. Like, you don't have to be into hip hop. If you have any appreciation for it whatsoever, if you ever liked any rap song ever in your life, which is like probably everybody ages like 50 and down at least, you'll like it.
Yeah.
Like you'll dig the whole vibe of the whole thing. But I didn't want to like leave anyone out. You know what I'm saying? Because that wouldn't be a good representation of myself. They're multifaceted.
It mirrors where you are
exactly
with music, because you were very lyrical and
Thank
paid
you.
attention to that, but did want a mainstream
I
thing.
did.
So,
but I also was like, I always wanted to make sure that like, I never was okay going like, all right, I'm going to make it. I'm going to be like the biggest in the world. So I don't care about like the lyric part. That was not acceptable because that was not where I came from. It's like, no. You're going to hear I have bars. Like, I need you to know this, that like I sat down and I took time with this and I didn't just go like, all right, I'm going to rhyme, you know, hood and good in like every song. Like, you know, like I hear people now, like I hear like Rick Ross. I think he's a great rapper, but sometimes I listen to Rick Ross and I go, if you just would have took 5 more minutes, man, you could have come up with a better word than like rhyming the same word. You know what I mean? 2 times.
I'm going to flat out say I don't think that's the case.
Yeah.
I don't think 5 hours would help that.
Right.
But how influential was that suggestion that your friend gave you forever ago with 8 and 16 and 8?
How influential? It shaped everything from that day to the day that I stopped.
Yeah, because that's what I get from you.
16-8, 16-8, 16-8. By the way, that guy is who mixed this project.
Okay.
Shout out to Melvin.
That was a great educational part of the book.
Yeah. Thank you. But again, this is all just what I lived. And I felt like there has to be something in here that someone who didn't live this may find interesting.
Well, we were having this discussion too, like about like rock bands and how, you know, some people work with producers and they shred that thing where it's like, okay, Bon Jovi said, don't bore us, get to the chorus. So it's like that thing where, you know, you have your 4 lines for the verse and then from there you got to hit them with either a pre-chorus or a big chorus. So I guess it's, you know, formulaic in that way as well. So,
but it's what you do with it too, because it's, I mean, again, it's like, if you know the formulas and you pay attention, you know, you start to pay attention to it when you listen. So then when you hear somebody who does something and it sounds so forced, you're just like, oh man, this is just the formula. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Cause you could hear Jay-Z's Hard Knock Life. That's like the least lyrical shit that he did. But it's still like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, you're like, that's good.
He's still
there.
banging.
And I feel, speaking of Jay-Z, who's my favorite, he's the best. The album that he cared the least about what was going on, I just don't think he was in the right headspace, to me, was Magna Carta Holy Grail. It's the worst album he's ever made. It's just like, I guess I'll do a rap album. I don't know, Samsung deal, and then I'll just like do some raps. And it's horrendous. It's awful. I don't listen to it ever. I don't ever want to hear it again. there's not one song that I care about if I ever hear it again.
You like 444?
Love it.
Okay.
I think it's fantastic. I think
I love that record.
It's so good because
I'm almost embarrassed because I'm older and everyone's like, it's kind of like older rap, and I'm like,
but
it hit me.
Yeah,
it's like adult contemporary.
He had
hip-hop.
some shit to say,
and
but like, what are you gonna do
lyrically?
You know? Because that's the thing about hip hop that's difficult is like a lot of it is braggadocio, which as a young man, it's like barbershop talk. It's like, I got the most women, you know. It's like, I don't care about women. It's like, that's stupid. All right, but then you grow up, and it's like, all right, well, now you're like 40, you're married. It's like, now you're going to say like, oh, you know, I met this girl after the show. It's like, well, you're not going to do that. It's like disrespectful. So it's like, where do you go? And because there's no one who has set the example prior to Jay-Z, because he's like the elder statesman, 444 is unbelievable because he's like, I've talked about selling drugs for so long and how much money I made selling drugs and how rich I was and how much more I knew about cool shit, how I had all the women. Now you've seen me. Like, there's no way this is true anymore. You know who I'm married to. You've seen my kids. Where do I go from now? Because all that shit is not cool by rap standards. And he did it. He figured it out. Because he's the best. That's why. Because he's like a 50-year-old man.
Because this is amazing. And I'm like, I don't know if...
He's a 50-year-old man and he goes, how can I do this?
Yeah.
How can I not lose people, but still talk my shit? How can I evolve in your ears without being like, oh man, this dude fell off?
And he didn't even lean on the music as much,
right?
You know, where that can carry you over if you're not going to be there lyrically and you just want to have like the best producers. Like some of the music even falls to the wayside a little bit to the lyrics on that record.
And he was into the project, and it totally shows because you know he No ID, famous producer from Chicago, came to him and was like, hey, I got this new like thing that I'm doing where I'm basically playing samples as if they were notes. And that was the basis of the album. And he came to just play it to Jay-Z, who basically was just kind of like, I don't know, man. Like, I should put out an album. Like, just like, come play me some music, like, inspire me. And he goes, I have this thing, though, that I'm doing. And then he played him and he goes, that's it. Let's go. And that inspired the whole album. And somehow that thing that No ID was doing inspired him to go, this is how I'm going to evolve rap music. I'm going to do something that I should be doing as the guy that you know that I really am. Like I've talked all these years about I'm legit, but I can't say like I'm legit drug dealer because now you're talking about something from 30 years ago. And that's ridiculous. Like now you're just like, that's a caricature. What else can I do? This is it. But that's what music does.
And it's funny, like when you take somebody's story, like his story from where he came from to where he is now, like you want to talk about like American success story.
Yeah.
Insane. Like, I can't think of anything beyond that. So,
and do you want to hear like a
yes, I do.
rich rapper giving you advice?
Right.
No, but the way he put it in the songs, like in O.J. Simpson and those songs, there's advice there that you probably wouldn't want to hear mostly.
And he's been doing it his whole career.
Yeah.
He said 1,000,000 years ago, chains are cool to cop, but more important are lawyer fees. I mean, this is to drug dealers. He's speaking to drug dealers like, I get it. This is what we do, but like, put some money aside. You're going to get in trouble. Like, he's been doing this his whole career, but now it's like, you know, invest in real estate, buy art. Like, this is, I mean, these are good lessons because, again, if you consider where he comes from, maybe we don't relate to it, but if you consider where he comes from, he's still talking to the same people.
And really difficult to pull off.
Exactly.
In a song.
It's like, how do you do it and not sound like you're talking above someone?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know how the hell we just got on a Jay-Z tangent, but he's the best, so. I can't not talk about Jay-Z and raps.
Reasonable doubt.
Yes, sir.
I feel like you got one album left in you. I mean, it's just my... I feel like sometime next year you're gonna go into your basement,
right?
And you're gonna be like, I could do another audiobook, or
I can make an album.
I could drop this Dat Piff mixtape.
Right?
Sam's got peoples.
Yeah.
He can put some.
Next thing I know, I'll have a record out. And,
Yeah, I was on the same block as Kanye yesterday. The same
this
block.
is what I'm saying.
So eventually,
Rap
proximity is just.
I did secretly. No one knows this. Like literally, not even my wife. I just recorded like a freestyle like a month ago. It was just in me and it came out and I heard a beat that I really liked and then I found the instrumental on YouTube because that's how easy it is these days. And I recorded a really, really long freestyle. It's not ready for consumption yet. Like I got to do it over, but I did and I like it.
Do you send that shit to Rue?
I did send it to him.
Yeah.
And he's like, "You had an itch to scratch." I said, "Yes, I did."
Is he gonna dust off the manager's suit?
You're right. He's like, "I'm back in."
There's a market for 40-year-olds from the South doing.
I actually do think that, honest to God, I think that there needs to be AC hip hop. I think there needs to be like adult contemporary hip hop in the same way that there's like adult contemporary. Everything. Like I think there needs to be like an easy listening like hip hop station
called Atmosphere.
Right.
Slug. There's actually a movie, I don't know if you saw it, called Adult Rappers.
No. Oh, I saw a piece of it and I can't remember whose piece in particular. I'm just remembering a guy in his backyard.
Maybe J-Zone?
Could have been J-Zone.
Okay. Do you know him?
Or whatever. No, it was all via like Fonte.
Okay.
Fonte is like the great equalizer. Because he's like knows everyone all of us who didn't make it and everyone, all those guys.
Yeah. Little Brother. Huge.
Yeah, that's my guy. And they have a new album and it's the best album of the year.
Does Ninth still do?
Huh?
Does Ninth still do the Beats for him?
No.
Because he's doing a lot of shit with Merce now.
He is, and he's got Rhapsody as his.
Oh shit! Does he really?
Rhapsody is his artist.
Yo, Rhapsody.
He like groomed Rhapsody.
Listen, Rhapsody is one of those females that, like, just rapper in general, that I was just waiting for her to finally get the props that she deserved.
I mean, she's signed to Rock Nation, so that's pretty good.
But still, like
the machine is behind her for sure.
I mean, I feel like the machine has been behind her. She's been making records for like 7 years, maybe.
Yeah.
She's been on some Static Selector songs.
Kendrick.
Yeah, exactly.
She was on Kendrick's album, which was amazing. It's the only feature on his album.
Like lyrically, she's amazing, and the new record's really good. She did the song which had the Liquid Sword sample
with the GZA and D'Angelo.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah.
Shout out there,
and shout out to Ninth too. He's in the story. It's an interesting relationship we had, but it's all good. Is the main thing.
It's all in the book.
Yeah, it's all good too. Shout out to everybody. I love everyone.
All right, yeah. So the name of the podcast, last question, is If I Ruled the World. So we ask all our guests. So today we ask Josh,
yes, sir.
If you ruled the world, what would that look like?
Well, full disclosure, I'm a fan of the podcast. So I was thinking about this on the way over. So I don't know if I've fully figured it out yet. But if I'm ruling the world, we're talking about the world. I mean, this is everything.
Talking about everything.
So 2 parts. I would say the first thing I would try to do, I would outlaw lying and disingenuousness, because I feel like that's the root of a lot of problems. If everybody would just be themselves and not try to just like lie and fake and look a certain way and do things based on whatever baggage they come to the table with, we'd avoid a lot of problems. The other part of it, because I don't think that people would actually like follow this rule because people break laws all the time. If I ruled the world, I tend to boil everything down to a very simplified answer, because I think that usually like simplicity is the way to go.
Yeah.
For a while, I would want everything to be run through me because I could simplify it. So like they go, hey, we're thinking about this guy for president, right? I would go, no way. This guy's a maniac. Next. And then that was it. That's the whole conversation.
Okay.
And then every bill, right, that would pass for the world, boil it down to like a 1-page or like an elevator pitch. Let me have it. If it's a good idea, great, let's do it. And if it turns out to not be a great idea, let's pull it, Global warming, things like that. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a politician. I'm not a whatever. But I just feel like there's a simpler way to do this to where if there was somebody with the power to make decisions that did not have an agenda, we'd all be better off. That's it. I'm agendaless. I have no agenda.
Yeah.
It's just my family. That's all I care about.
You're a Taurus. Not
That's
agendaless.
Right.
I'm a Taurus also.
Yeah, are you?
So I picked that up.
Yeah. I'm just really hard.
You're agenda neutral.
I like what I... That was unbelievable, actually.
And Sam, correct me if I'm wrong.
What bathroom does he use?
Oh, my God. Oh. I am non-agenda binary.
Yeah.
Now we went through the whole episode. Now we're going to get...
Yeah, that's it. They're going to fast forward to the very last part.
But first time we've ever had a two-part answer.
Yes.
Sam.
Oh,
right?
Thank you.
We got a two-part answer.
Yeah.
This is
I wonder if anybody else was ever...
Josh and one from what's his name?
Right. It's multiple personalities. No,
All
it's extensions of one. That's all.
Cool. Anyone listening that wants to listen to the podcast, where do they find it?
So it's available on Apple Podcasts and SoundCloud. So if you go to both, either or, and type in Why You'll Never Be a Rapper, particularly Apple, you won't have to finish that. It'll come up because there's just no other podcast called Why You'll Never Anything.
Yeah.
So just start typing that in. Why You'll Never Be a Rapper. You'll find it. SoundCloud.
Or look in the show notes. We'll put everything up.
Yeah, we'll put
That's
the links
right.
up for sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, I want to talk to you again, but only when you do your next project.
I have it in mind.
Okay.
Full disclosure, it's in my mind, and much like this project, the title came first. So that's a good sign. We'll see where it takes me. I don't know.
All right,
it has
brother.
to be organic, man.
So yeah.
I appreciate you guys.
If I ruled the world, I love 'em, baby.